I want to tell you about the time that I had to outrun a hurricane. So I don't know if you guys remember Hurricane Irma in 2017. Again, this might be a shorter video, but this was part of my Peru trip. I've talked about my Peru trip before. I'll probably make a couple of videos about the adventures that we had. I told you about the archaeologists, and I have a couple of more things from that trip I want to talk to you about. But this story is about Hurricane Irma, okay? And I'm not going to mention the name of the airline that screwed us over. But anyway, we're done at Peru, right? We had this crazy 3-week adventure where we went to archaeological sites and we ate local food and just learned so much about the culture, and it was beautiful and amazing. We made friends and stayed with local families that fed us, and it was beautiful. And then we're trying to come back home. So we're exhausted. We've just been traveling wears you out. And we're on these 22-hour bus rides because we took a bus from Cusco, from Lima to Cusco and back. And so we hop on the plane in Lima. We're like, we're finally going home. Finally, after this crazy adventure, getting home. Psych! It wasn't time for us to go home yet because we went to Fort Lauderdale. That was what our flight was doing. Fort Lauderdale and then back to Denver, and then we would drive to Salt Lake. So we found that the tickets were cheaper flying out of Denver. So we arrive in Fort Lauderdale. We have a 13-hour layover. 13 hours. And we knew that the hurricane was coming. Everybody knew that Irma was coming. And so we're like, oh, I sure hope if our flight is canceled, they'll tell us sometime within the 13 hours. But no. We just had 13 hours to chill, and it was actually kind of nice. We went and bathed in the ocean, which technically you weren't allowed to do, but it was so interesting because of how calm it was. And I think part of that is that there just weren't people on the beach, but it was just like there was no just even sort of, and people from the coast probably just know this, but like there was nothing to suggest that a hurricane was coming, except for the fact that maybe it was too calm. Like there were barely waves. It was just like calm water. It was pretty spooky, but we got to go out into the ocean and just like experience that. And anyway, over the 13 hours, we just chilled and swam in the ocean. And then we finally come back and we're like, this is the great, peaceful, beautiful end of the trip. We just had this ocean experience. We were on the beach. Now we're back at the airport, ready to go. And 10 minutes after we were scheduled to board, they told us that our flight was canceled because of the hurricane. 10 minutes after we were supposed to board, which is like, that's kind of a problem, especially because at that point, there are absolutely no hotel rooms. Pretty much every single car that you could rent was gone. All the bus tickets, train tickets, sold out because of people who knew that their flights were canceled. And then we probably, we were young, which was another thing. We couldn't even rent a car. We weren't even old enough. So we're sitting there, and it was this crazy, amazing experience. We're in just with the other people for the flight, and there's this guy, this older gentleman, and his name was Michael. Nowadays, we refer to him as Saint Michael because he was our saving grace. And actually, September, I think 19th, was when we're flying back, is always known as St. Michael's Day to us because of our salvation, which came through this man. Anyway, for some reason, we're these two young guys, and this is a crazy story, and, intuition played a whole part of this because I wouldn't recommend this be the way people go about things necessarily, but for some reason, it just felt right. Anyway, as soon as they said the flight's canceled, there was this long line of people lining up to get a solution for their tickets, which we found out later, all they did was say like, sorry, we don't have tickets for you. There's nothing that we can do. So waiting in that line would have made it even worse. But for some reason, right as they announced this guy, Michael, he looks at us. He's like, we need to go. We need to rent a car together. We need to drive across the country. Because he was also going back to Denver. And I know that sounds super sketchy, but there's just something about it in the moment. We had like kind of joked around with this guy and got to know him a little bit and got to know like things about him. And he's just like, we need to go rent a car. So we went, and we weren't old enough to rent a car anyway. So we went to the car rental agency as fast as we could. He was an older guy, so he's like, I will rent the car. And we got an SUV, and he's like, what we can do is we can just switch off driving and just drive straight there. We won't stop, so we can beat the traffic and get out there. And like one of us can sleep in the back and the other two, one in the front and the one drives, and we'll switch off. We're like, let's do it. So we just go. And we just rocket off, and the traffic is crazy, and we're trying to get through all of these things, and we're just like, Irma is coming. And at this point, it was actually like there because we had waited 13 hours for a flight that wasn't ever going to take off. And we just, as soon as we made it out of Georgia, We knew they were safe, and we just rocketed across the country. This guy, Michael, was incredible. He told us stories, these wild stories from when he was a kid. And he told us all about, like, sneaking into Disneyland and, like, living in different countries and everything. He was just such an interesting individual, and this was, like, this huge adventure for us. And as we were going back, he told us, like, hey, I have to admit this to you guys. I didn't want to say anything, but I just had the strongest feeling that I needed to help you out. And I know that's weird because you don't know me, but as soon as they announced that, I was just overcome with this feeling like these two young boys need your help. And that's the thing. We wouldn't have made it out of Florida without him. We couldn't rent a car. We were not old enough to rent a car at the time. So it was this incredible bit of intuition that this guy just, like, felt like, you know, he was planning on renting a car and driving to Denver, but he just, for some reason, sensed that we needed help and immediately said, like, we're going to go rent a car. And we drove all the way through Kansas and just switched off. And then we got to Denver and just had this, I don't know, I've had these moments when I'm traveling where you create these bonds with people. And if you've traveled, you know what it's like, where you just share something. You share in this adventure. And some of these people I still talk to today that I met years ago on my trips. And it's just amazing. It's an incredible experience to share this sort of crazy running away from a hurricane adventure. And anyway, Michael dropped us off in Denver, and we said goodbye, and he went home to his wife, and we hopped in our car and drove the 7 hours directly to Utah. And it was the longest road trip I had ever been a part of, especially one longest road trip in the smallest amount of time, for sure. We got home, back to Utah. We looked at each other, me and my friend, were like, we did it. Literally an impossible thing presented itself, and somehow we made it through. So that's what I want to say in this moment. There will be impossible things that you will do in life. And somehow you will find yourself doing impossible things. And that's one of the most incredible things I think about being alive. So anyway, yeah, maybe this story wasn't as short as I thought it would be. I always think they're going to be shorter. I just talk so fast, but I just want to tell you guys that, like, the impossible's out there waiting for you to prove that it was possible all along. And I believe that every single person is capable of that, and that your story, your life, has chapters like that. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good day.